Before the foundations of the world were laid, before galaxies spun into motion and the earth took its first breath, there was God, unshaken, limitless, and utterly whole. He wasn't lonely, he wasn't lacking, he wasn't searching for meaning, yet from the fullness of who he is, he made a decision that still echoes across eternity, to create life, to shape humanity from dust, and to form you with his own hands. Right now, maybe you're sitting in silence, carrying questions that no one else can hear. Maybe your days feel mechanical, like you're just surviving, not truly living. Maybe the smile you wear masks a soul that's quietly unraveling. And maybe, just maybe, you've started to wonder if your life has any real weight, any divine intention behind it. That wondering, that quiet ache deep inside is not a flaw. It's not your weakness showing, it's a clue. It's the fingerprint of a creator who placed eternity in your heart. Because the question, why did God create you, is more than an intellectual puzzle. It's the key to understanding who you are and who he is. It's sacred, it's intimate. And if you lean in, I believe you'll begin to hear a whisper that changes everything. You weren't made by mistake. You weren't born out of chaos or coincidence. You were chosen, formed by a deliberate act of love, breathed into existence by a God who looked across all of time and said, "The world needs you in it." Every heartbeat you carry is evidence of that intention. Every breath is a reminder that your story matters because it begins with him. You see, your purpose isn't something you have to invent. It's something you were designed for. It's written into your very being. The Bible doesn't just explain what humans are. It reveals why we exist. And the answer is love. A love so immense that it crafted a universe just to hold a place for you. A love that tore through the veil of heaven to meet you in your brokenness. A love that isn't abstract. It's embodied in Jesus, in the cross, in your creation. So as you hear these words, don't just listen with your mind. Open your spirit. Let yourself feel what maybe you've buried for years, the truth that you were made on purpose, for a purpose, not to impress, not to perform, but to belong, to love, to be loved, and to walk in relationship with the one who authored your first breath and longs to guide your next. Number 1, formed to reflect the sacred imprint of God. Let's return to the very first pages of Scripture, the moment before humanity took its first breath. There were no empires yet, no commandments carved in stone, no failures to redeem. Only God, speaking destiny into existence. In Genesis 1:26 we read, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, after our likeness.'" This wasn't casual. This wasn't experimental. It was the beginning of everything, and it was deeply intentional. Those words shaped the foundation of what it means to be human. To be made in God's image isn't just a poetic phrase. It's the essence of who you are. It means you are not a mere accident of biology. You are not a collection of cells and instincts. You were born with divine DNA, stamped with the echo of heaven's glory. Unlike anything else in creation, God chose to pour something of himself into humanity. He didn't model you after the beasts of the field or the stars in the sky. He modeled you after himself. Then he leaned down and did something unthinkable. He breathed his very spirit into dust, and dust became destiny. That was the birth of the soul. That was the moment you became more than matter. You became meaning. But what does this divine reflection actually look like in us? It looks like the ability to love when it's hard. It looks like choosing mercy over vengeance. It looks like imagination, wisdom, sacrifice, and truth. Our ability to dream, to weep, to hope, to build, to embrace. All of it flows from the image we carry. Every time we create beauty, protect life, or speak truth, we are whispering echoes of our Maker. And this image, it changes the way we see ourselves and others. Your value isn't up for debate. It isn't earned by success or shattered by failure. It was given at creation. It is inherent, unshakable, and eternal. That's why every human life, regardless of background, ability, or belief, matters deeply. We are walking reflections of the divine. Yes, sin fractured that image. The mirror cracked, and our reflection of God became dim and distorted. We lost sight of who we were meant to be. But here's the powerful truth. The image was never destroyed. And that's exactly why Jesus came, not just to save us from sin, but to restore what was broken, to remake us in the image we were always meant to bear. So why did God create humans? The first answer is this: to reflect Him. You were made to shine with the light of the one who formed you. You are living evidence of His nature, His heart, His glory. That is not something ordinary. That is sacred. You are not disposable. You are not forgotten. You are the image of God, living, breathing, eternal. Number 2, created for communion, the heartbeat behind your existence. Have you ever felt it? That quiet ache beneath the noise of life, the kind that success can't silence, relationships can't fill, and distraction can't numb. That emptiness isn't a flaw, it's a signal, a reminder that you were made for something more, someone more. You were created for relationship, not routine, not ritual, relationship with the very God who formed your soul. When you open the Bible, the story doesn't begin with commandments. It doesn't open with religion. It opens with a walk in the garden, with God, with man. Adam and Eve didn't discover God by climbing a spiritual ladder. They simply existed in His presence. They didn't perform. They belonged. And God, the creator of galaxies, walked with them, talked with them, delighted in them. Not because He had to, but because He wanted to. That image alone rewrites everything. It tells us that God's first desire was never just obedience. It was intimacy. He didn't make you to serve Him like a machine. He made you to know Him like a child knows a father. That kind of closeness is the core of why you exist. And what's even more incredible is this: God didn't create you out of emptiness. He wasn't filling a void. Within the perfect eternal relationship of the Trinity, He already had love, communion, joy. But love, real love, is not selfish. It overflows. It gives. So God created humanity, not to fix a problem, but to invite us into what already existed, perfect, unbroken fellowship. But then came the fracture. Sin was more than disobedience. It was a break in the relationship. It was a turning away from the voice that once walked beside us. And since that moment, humanity has been running, hiding in achievement, drowning in distractions, pretending performance can replace presence. Yet God never stopped pursuing. From the garden to the manger, from the wilderness, tabernacle to the torn veil at Calvary, the message has always been the same: I want you back, not to be better behaved, not to be more religious, but to be close again. Jesus came to restore what was lost, not a law, but a relationship. Too many people see God as distant, disappointed, or disinterested. But the cross tells a different story. It tells us of a God who moved heaven and earth to make His home in human hearts again. A God who doesn't want your performance. He wants your presence. So, why did God create humans? The answer isn't hidden in religious complexity. It's as simple and profound as this: love. You were made for love. You were made by love and for love, to walk with your Creator, to know His voice, to be fully known and still fully embraced. That's not religion. That's relationship. That's why you're here. Number 3, the cost of love. Why God chose freedom over control. Why didn't God stop evil before it began? Why allow the possibility of betrayal, heartbreak, and death? If He's all-powerful, why not create a world without pain? These are not just theological riddles. They are cries from wounded hearts searching for meaning in a broken world. And the answer, though it may break us, also sets us free. Love cannot exist without choice. When God designed humanity, He could have made us incapable of rebellion, wired for perfect obedience, programmed to praise. But He didn't. Instead, He formed us with something sacred, free will, because real love must be chosen. It cannot be manufactured. It cannot be forced. Love that is coerced isn't love at all. It's manipulation. God didn't want puppets. He wanted people, sons and daughters who could choose him, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And with that freedom came the possibility of rejection, the risk of heartbreak, the open door to sin. That's what happened in Eden. It wasn't just a rule that was broken. It was a relationship that was betrayed. Adam and Eve chose independence over intimacy, and in doing so, opened the floodgates to suffering. But God wasn't surprised. This wasn't a divine oversight. It was a risk he knowingly took because he valued love more than control. And here's the staggering truth. Even before that first act of rebellion, God had already planned redemption. He knew what it would cost. He saw the thorns, the nails, the blood. Revelation 13:8 tells us Jesus is the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. That means the cross wasn't plan B. It was always part of the plan. Before the first breath of humanity, Jesus had already chosen the cross. Before the first sin, he had already chosen suffering, not because we deserved it, but because he loved us. And love, real love, always carries risk. This is the kind of love that doesn't make sense by human standards. Who chooses betrayal over safety? Who picks pain when peace is an option? God does. Because for him, your heart is worth the risk. He would rather endure your rejection than live without your freedom. He would rather suffer your silence than force your worship. That's love. So why did God create humans? Because he knew that the only way to experience genuine love was to allow the possibility of heartbreak. And he chose that risk with eyes wide open. He chose it for you, not because you'd always get it right, but because he always would. That's the kind of love that rewrites everything. That's the kind of love that chose the cross and chose you. Number 4. Born to reign. Your royal calling in God's eternal plan. From the very beginning, God's vision for humanity was never passive. He didn't simply give us breath, he gave us authority. In Genesis 1:28, he blessed the first humans and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion." These were not gentle suggestions. They were royal decrees, spoken over a creation made in his image. You were never meant to drift through life without direction. You were crafted with purpose, designed not only to reflect God's nature, but to partner in his rule. Humanity was appointed as stewards, not owners, rulers, not tyrants. From the very beginning, the earth was placed under our care, not to exploit, but to cultivate, not to conquer, but to bless. This is the divine partnership God offered to extend his kingdom, his justice, his peace through the hands and hearts of his image bearers. We weren't made for religious sidelines. We were made to carry divine authority into everyday reality. 2. Reign doesn't mean control. It means responsibility under the direction of a king. And this commission goes far beyond Eden. In 1 Peter 2:9, we're reminded that we are a chosen people, a royal priesthood. That's not just flowery language. It's a spiritual identity. Royalty speaks to your authority. Priesthood speaks to your intimacy. Together, they define your calling, to bring heaven's values into earth's brokenness. You are not just a caretaker of physical creation. You are an ambassador of a spiritual kingdom. Every act of compassion, every word of truth, every moment of worship is part of your reign. You stand in the tension between the seen and unseen, carrying the presence of God into the world around you. And even when humanity fell, God didn't revoke the calling. He pursued us through covenants, through kings and prophets. Then, through Jesus, he didn't just repair the relationship, he restored the purpose. Revelation 5:10 proclaims that we have been made a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth. This isn't some distant promise for the afterlife. It begins now. Through the power of the Holy Spirit, we walk in authority, not to elevate ourselves, but to represent Him. Every time you choose righteousness over compromise, every time you stand for truth, every time you bring hope to despair, you are fulfilling your original purpose. To reign with God doesn't mean having control over people. It means having influence for people. It means laying down your own will to carry out His. It's humble authority. It's servant leadership. It's living not just with God, but for Him. So why did God create humans? To share in His mission, to rule in righteousness, to reflect His kingdom, to be His hands and voice on earth. You were not created to merely exist. You were chosen to reign, with love as your crown, truth as your banner, and the King Himself as your guide. Number 5, for His glory, designed to radiate the divine. Why did God create us? The answer can be found in one sentence, Isaiah 43:7. Everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory. Those words are not poetic filler. They are the foundation of human purpose. You were created not by accident, not for religion, not even primarily for your own fulfillment. You were created for His glory. But what does that mean? Glory isn't just light or grandeur. It's the visible expression of God's nature. His beauty, holiness, power, and love made known. And God chose you to be a vessel of that revelation. He made you to reflect who He is, to put His goodness on display through your life. That doesn't mean trying harder to be perfect. Glorifying God is not about performance. It's about alignment. It's when your heart, your life, your choices begin to mirror His heart, when your compassion reveals His mercy, when your endurance reveals His strength, when your joy in hardship reveals His presence. Jesus made it even clearer in Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. That's your calling, to shine. Not in pride, but in purpose. Your life is meant to be a spotlight pointed toward heaven. Glorifying God doesn't always look loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, consistent faithfulness. It's choosing integrity when no one sees. It's forgiving when it hurts. It's holding on to hope when the world tells you to give up. In those moments, you are doing what you were born to do. You are magnifying the character of your Creator. And here's the stunning paradox. When you live for God's glory, you become most fully alive. The world tells us to chase happiness, power, success, but those things fade. They were never meant to fill the eternal space inside of you. Only the presence of God can satisfy the soul He created. Worship, then, is not just an event, it's a lifestyle. It's more than music or church attendance. True worship is when your everyday life becomes an offering. It's when you drive, speak, work, rest, and love with a heart that whispers, "This is for you." That is glory made visible. That is worship in action. So why did God create humans? To glorify Him, to reflect His nature, to embody His love, to live in such a way that the world sees Him through you. This is your highest calling, your truest identity, your eternal purpose. You were made to shine, and when you do, heaven touches earth. Number 6, the eternal plan, made to be His sons and daughters forever. From Genesis to Revelation, through every covenant, every prophet, every promise, one theme never changes. God has always wanted a family, not just followers, not just worshippers. Family. That's not poetic language. It's the very essence of your existence. You weren't made to be a nameless servant in a far-off kingdom. You were created to be a beloved child in the arms of a perfect Father. Ephesians 1:5 declares it with clarity. In love, He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ. Before your first breath, before your first mistake, God had already made the decision, I want you in my family. This wasn't an afterthought. It wasn't a rescue plan invented after humanity fell. It was the plan from the beginning. God didn't just make humans to rule creation or reflect His glory. He made us to belong, to walk with Him in closeness, to be known fully and loved eternally. He didn't just want to create life, he wanted to share his life. He wanted you at his table, in his house, bearing his name. That's why Jesus didn't just come to forgive your sins, he came to restore your identity. Romans 8:17 says, "If we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ." Let that sink in. You're not just saved, you're family. And this isn't a temporary arrangement, this isn't a fragile invitation, this is eternal. The story doesn't end with God reigning far above and us groveling far below. It ends with a wedding, a reunion, a forever home. Revelation 21 shows us what God has always longed for. Now the dwelling of God is with man, and he will live with them. No more separation, no more sorrow, just God and his people, together forever. This is why the enemy attacks your identity so fiercely. Because if you forget who you are, you'll forget what you're worth. You'll settle for religion instead of relationship, for shame instead of sonship. But the cross screams the truth over your life. You are wanted, you are chosen, you are loved. Jesus didn't die for strangers. He died for family. And when he rose again, the door was thrown wide open, inviting prodigals home, healing orphans, and restoring every broken heart to the Father's embrace. So why did God create humans? Because he wanted sons and daughters, not for a season, but for forever. You weren't just made for purpose. You were made for belonging, for communion, for love that never ends. That is your destiny. That is your home. That is the eternal plan. Conclusion, you were made. Because love chose you now, that you've journeyed through the wonder of creation, the intention behind your design, the invitation into relationship, and the eternal heartbeat of God's plan, maybe something deep inside you is starting to awaken, a whisper in your soul that says, "This was never random. You are not a product of chance. You are not the result of cosmic coincidence or evolutionary drift. You are the masterpiece of a God who imagined you before time itself, a God who spoke light into being, yet took the time to shape you with his own hands, a God who commands galaxies, yet leaned down to breathe life into dust, your dust. Why did God create humans? Why did he create you? Because he wanted his image to walk the earth in you, because he longed for communion, not control, with you. Because he knew love was only real if it could be chosen by you, because he destined you to carry his glory, to steward his world, to reign in righteousness, because he made you not just to exist, but to belong. You were crafted to reflect his beauty. You were designed to carry his presence. You were called to be a light in the darkness, and above all, you were created to be his, fully, forever. That's not just a story. That's your story. Maybe you've spent years believing you're insignificant. Maybe you've heard voices telling you you're too broken, too late, too far gone. But the voice of your Creator says something different. You are chosen. You are seen. You are known. And you are deeply, eternally loved. This isn't abstract theology. This is the truth that holds your world together. The cross wasn't a desperate fix. It was the divine plan from the start, to bring you home, to adopt you, to make you family. So if your heart has ever cried out for meaning, if your soul has ever ached to be known, if you've ever stood under the stars and wondered if you matter, here's your answer. Yes, you matter. Yes, you belong. Yes, you were made for something greater. You were made by a God who never makes mistakes. You were made for love. You were made for him. That is why God created humans. That is why God created you. And when you finally believe that truth, not just with your mind, but with your whole heart, everything changes. If this message spoke to your heart, don't let it end here. Be part of the mission. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more powerful truths like this. Leave a comment below and let us know how this touched you. We read every single one. And if you believe someone else needs to hear this, share the video. You never know whose life you might change just by clicking that button.